I'm Kim Vidal in Doha. The top stories on Al Jazeera. The United States has recorded 2,800 deaths from coronavirus, the highest daily number since the pandemic started. US President-elect Joe Biden says he'll ask Americans to make a commitment to mask wearing when he takes office. More now from Kristen Salumi in Wilmington, Delaware.
Interesting news coming out late here from Wilmington. President-elect Joe Biden saying that he intends to ask Americans to mask up once he takes office for 100 days. The first inkling we have of how his response may be different than the current administration's. He was speaking to U.S. network CNN and described his plans. He said where possible, he would mandate masks, for example, on interstate travel, on airplanes, and in federal buildings, but otherwise would seek to influence Americans by his example. And he said it was important for him and the vice president themselves to wear masks as an example. Of course, mask wearing has become controversial in some parts of the United States, so there could be some pushback on that front. But Biden seeming to stress that there would be an end date, that this was for a limited time, 100 days to get the virus under control. He also talked about the fact that his plan was not to close the economy, but to offer clear guidance, not to impose specific lockdowns so much as guidance. He talked about if restaurants and bars need to close for periods of time, that they need to know that there would be assistance and what the ground rules were going to be moving forward. Of course, that's perhaps easier said than done for him because any type of aid for restaurants would have to be approved by Congress. But nonetheless, again, a clear signal, a clear indication of where the administration is heading in terms of its COVID plan.
Soaring infections in the U.S. have prompted tougher measures. California's governor has announced a regional lockdown plan based on intensive care capacity.
The bottom line is if we don't act now, our hospital system will be overwhelmed. If we don't act now, we'll continue to see a death rate climb, more lives lost. Here's what we are introducing today. Regions where the ICU capacity is falling below 15%. We are now mandating that we are implementing a stay-at-home order for 3 weeks.
The UN Secretary-General has called for a unified global response to COVID-19. Antonio Guterres was speaking at a special pandemic session of the United Nations. Deaths from coronavirus have reached 1.5 million globally, with around 10,000 people dying on Thursday.
For the first time since 1945, the entire world is confronted by a common threat, regardless of nationality, ethnicity or faith. The World Health Organization provided factual information and scientific guidance that should have been the basis for a coordinated global response. Unfortunately, many of these recommendations were not followed. And in some situations, there was a rejection of facts and an ignorance of the guidance. And when countries go in their own direction, the virus goes in every direction.
The UN says famine-like conditions have reappeared in parts of Yemen, and almost half the population is experiencing high levels of food insecurity. Aid agencies are warning time is running out to prevent mass starvation. The top court in Central African Republic has ruled that former President Francois Bozizé can't stand for election. It decided Bozizé did not satisfy the good morality requirement for candidates because of an international warrant and UN sanctions against him. The former leader is accused of murder, torture and supporting groups guilty of war crimes. Aid workers say thousands of Rohingya refugees are being coerced into moving to a remote island off Bangladesh, which the UN warns is prone to storms and flooding. Nearly 1 million Rohingya have been living in squalid camps in southeast Bangladesh after fleeing violence in Myanmar. Well, those are the headlines. The news continues here on Al Jazeera right after Witness Ghost Fleet. Do stay with us.